think it's great to see you kind of moving between these modalities where you know that actually an audience loving your work feels good, right? Whether they buy it or not.
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of theories because I remember coming up in the art world, there was always this thing that like you have to hold back. You have to pretend that you don't want to sell the things or that you don't want to talk to the audience. One of the benefits of growing up in New York City and being on the scene in New York City, and first time I ever played live was at CBGB's when I was 15. And that it struck me as afraid when people don't want to engage and want to, the pretend idea of cool. And it always occurred to me that, like, Miles Davis, who's probably the coolest musician to ever, he invented the idea of cool, but that man must have hustled so much to get his gigs. And you don't get anywhere without saying what you want. And I also am afraid very often, and I want to come off as cool, but at the same time, I was seeing that refusal to engage as fear, and that didn't seem cool to me. Like it seemed like someone who arrived in the big city, which I was thankfully already in. So I didn't have to be scared of things. When I was 16 years old, I had a sort of a political group, and we were going to make banners for the 1986 anti-apartheid rally in Central Park, June 21st, I think it was. And I reached out to Keith Haring and asked him whether he would work with me and my friends on making these banners. And he said, sure, come down to the studio. And I know that I was like a 16-year-old boy, and I was full of myself, but that kind of willingness to do that, and then he says yes, and I have pictures of us together in this, and he's like drawing on our stupid 16-year-old banners.
Amazing.
And you just realize, like, well, that only happens because you reach out and weren't embarrassed to, and I did learn embarrassment later, and I did get kind of like, oh no, maybe this, like we all do. But then you remember, like, oh, wait a second. All you have to do is call,
Yeah.
or at the very least, email, and that protects you. One of the things when we were hanging out in his studio that day, I remember him just saying a couple times, "Remember, art is for everybody." And of those things that I've held on to my whole life, and not really knowing. Because I have to say, when I called him up, I knew he was famous, but I was a little bit on the fence of what I thought of his work. He seemed like someone who always wanted to be in front of the camera, was a partier, wanted to make a lot of money. I had this in my brain, and and he would do the same things over and over again. And I had all kinds of judgment about that. But that said, his inviting us all into the studio and saying that to me, and having that 40 years later still play out in my mind when I make work and think about who it's for and think about who I'm trying to speak to, is still one of the most profound kind of like North Stars in my career.